Back now at 8:46 with more of our special Today's Women series. And this morning, the choices we made. A growing number of women are choosing to be child-free. And although it may go against conventional wisdom, many say their lives are equally as fulfilling. Sarah Brokaw, a licensed psychotherapist and the author of Fortitude, looked into the trend for us.
As a little girl, Lily Marcus loved playing with dolls. She was the star babysitter in the neighborhood. But when it came to wanting children one day, Lily had very different ideas.
I really enjoyed being around children, but even when I was young, I just kind of knew in the back of my head it wasn't something that I wanted.
And she's not alone. According to a recent Pew Center study, nearly 1 in 5 American women enter childbearing years without giving birth, up from 1 in 10 in the 1970s. As a freelance writer, Lily penned a column discussing her choice to be child-free. And she says the responses from readers came as no surprise.
I was expecting people to tell me that I was selfish. I get that all the time. I was expecting people to tell me that I was less of a woman, because that's something that I get all the time.
So why does society pass judgment on women who choose not to have children?
Society expects that. One of the main transition and roles that we should aspire to are to be mothers. The bottom line is, it is a choice, and for women, we don't have to feel like motherhood is a rite of passage that we necessarily have to have.
Freedom, independence, and fulfillment in other aspects of life have led some women today to choose a child-free lifestyle. But for many of these women, there are still moments of doubt. You're very convincing in your argument that you make about choosing not to have children at this point in your life. But have there been any moments within the past few years about any second guessing?
I think the problem for me is, as an older sibling, I always felt like it was my job to be the one who had children.
Dr. Taylor says self-doubt is typical.
There's no question that they experience self-doubt, but they have made a conscious decision that to be a woman and to live a fulfilled life, having a child doesn't necessarily have to be a factor in that.
A feeling Lily agrees with.
I'd love to get married. I would love to have a life partner. I think there's a difference between 2 adults consciously choosing to spend their lives together versus 2 adults deciding to bring a third person into the situation.
Sarah Brokaw is now with us this morning, along with Laura Scott, who wrote the book 2 is Enough, A Couple's Guide to Living Childless by Choice. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
All right, so Laura, let's start with you and ask you about this idea. What are the stereotypes that you think need to be overcome today?
Well, there's the stereotype, as been mentioned, that you're motivated by selfishness, that you're sort of cold, heartless, and that you really are not focused on the common good, that you're focused entirely on your own self-value. And so that's really one of the issues. The other thing is there's the assumption that you're going to change your mind, that this is some kind of phase that you're going through, that you're going to hit a wall, that hormonal combustion at 35 or 36, and all of a sudden you're going to change your mind and everything you've chosen for yourself.
And you hear a lot about this in your practice.
I do. I also hear, it's interesting that you're saying that, because I think there's a mixture of women that I get in my practice. I think there are a lot of women who do not necessarily want to have kids, but they don't know what their calling is. And I think there's the other group of women who really would like to have children, but they've had a great amount of difficulty. So it's interesting to get both.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have all met people who maybe shouldn't have become parents, okay?
Right.
So maybe we should rethink how much we pressure people into having children.
Absolutely.
So what is the road past these stereotypes based on your efforts to study the situation, Laura?
I think, you really have to find out exactly what your role is going to be. Because motherhood is, some people might call it a calling, but really it's a role. It's not a being. So I think I coach women and couples on reproductive decision making, and that's one of the things. What are your values? What is your role that you want to adopt? And how do you want to go forward? Because motherhood is not the only path to adulthood, maturity, fulfillment, and a purposeful life.
Right, exactly. So what is the road? If it's a road that we're not able to see, what is the road to the things that we just heard Laura describe, Sarah?
I think that it's about women really figuring out where their energy level is raised, meaning what is their authentic voice telling them. And it may not be about mothering, but it could be a calling that's related to children. That could be being a teacher, social worker, congresswoman, nurse practitioner, physician. And I feel like what happens is that society looks at women as child bearers, and that's how we're supposed to define our success as women. We're not necessarily. I think there are other ways in which women can relate to children, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be moms.
Right. These are very good points. Thank you so much for giving us some sense, a greater clarity on this. It was a good report. Sarah Brokaw, thank you. And Laura Scott.